오늘은 부디 제발 절지 않게 해주세요. 나 혼자 말입니다. 예. Chapter 3. Where is here? Jack opened his eyes. Sunlight slanted through the window. Sunlight slanted through the window. The treehouse was still high up in the treehouse, but it wasn't the same tree. Where are we? said Annie. She and Jack looked out the window. The pteranodon was soaring through the sky. The ground was covered with ferns and tall grass. There was a winding stream, a sloping hill, and volcanoes in the distance. I don't know where we are, said Jack. The pteranodon glided down to the base of the tree. It landed on the ground and stood bed still. 자꾸 전해. So what just happened to us? Said Annie. Well, said Jack, I was looking at the picture in the book. And you said, wow, I wish we could go. 다시. And you said, wow, I wish we could go to 다시. And you said, wow, I wish we could go to the time of pteranodons, said Annie. Yeah, and then we saw a pteranodon in the Brook Creek woods, said Jack. Yeah, and then the wind got loud, and the treehouse started spinning, said Annie. And we landed here, said Jack. And we landed here, said Annie. So that means, said Jack. So that means what? Said Annie. I don't know, said Jack. He shook his head. None of this can be real. 다시. None of this can be real. None of this can be real. Annie looked out the window again. But he's real, she said. He's very real. Jack looked out the window with her again. The pteranodon was standing at the base of the tree like a god. His giant wings were spread out on either side of him. His giant wings were spread out on either side of him. Hi! Annie shouted. Shh! Said Jack. We are not supposed to be here. But where is here? Said Annie. I don't know, said Jack. Hi! Who are you? Annie called to the pteranodon. The creature just looked at her. The creature just looked up at her. Are you nuts? He can't talk, said Jack. But maybe the book can tell us. Jack looked down at the book. He let the words under the picture. This flying reptile lived in the Cretaceous period. It vanished 65 million years ago with the dinosaurs. That's impossible, said Jack. We can't have gone to a time 65 billion years ago. Jack, said Annie. He's nice. Nice? Said Jack. Yeah, I can tell, said Annie. Let's go down to him. Go down? Said Jack. And he started down to the love letter. Hey, come back, said Jack. But Annie kept going. Annie, wait, Jack called. Annie dropped to the ground. She stepped boldly up to the ancient creature. Chapter 4. Henry? Jack gasped as Annie reached out her hand toward the pterodon. Oh no, he thought. Annie was always trying to make friends with animals, but this wasn't. But this was going too far. Don't get too close to him, Annie," said Annie. Jack shouted. Annie touched the pterodon's crest. She stroked his neck. She was talking to him. What in the world is she saying? Jack wondered. He took a deep breath. Okay, he would go down. He would go down too. It would be good to examine a pterodon. He could take notes like a scientist. Jack started down the love ladder. When he reached out the ground. When he reached the ground, he was only a few feet away from the creature. The pterodon stared at Jack. His eyes were bright and alert. He's soft, Jack, said Annie. He feels like Henry. Jack snorted. He's not dog, Annie. Feel him, Jack, said Annie. Jack didn't move. Don't think, Jack. Just do it, Annie said. Jack stepped forward. Jack reached out very cautiously. He brushed his hand down the creature's neck. Interesting, Jack thought. A thin layer of fuzzy covered the pterodon's skin. Soft, huh? Annie said. Jack reached into his backpack and pulled out a Kilda. Jack reached into his backpack and pulled out a pencil and a notebook. He wrote, "Fuzzy skin." What are you doing? Asked Annie. Taking notes, said Jack. We are probably the first person in the whole world to ever see a real life pterodon. Jack looked at the pterodon again. The bony crest on the top of his head was longer than Jack's arm. Oh, 스무스했어. I wonder how smart he is, Jack said. Very smart, said Annie. Don't count on it, said Jack. His brain's probably no bigger than a pin. No, he's very smart. I can feel it, said Annie. I'm going to call him Henry. Jack wrote in his notebook. Smart brain. Jack looked at the creature again. Maybe he's a mutant, he said. The pterodon tilted his head. Jack left it. 아니, 잭이 아니라 Annie잖아. Annie left. He's not a mutant, Jack. Well, what is doing here then? Where's the place? Said Jack. Annie leaned close to the pterodon. Do you know where we are, Henry? Annie asked softly. The creature fixed his eyes on Annie. His long jaws were opening and closing like a giant pair of scissors. Are you trying to talk to me, Henry? Asked Annie. Forget it, Annie. Jack wrote in his notebook. Mouth like scissors. Did we come to a time long ago, Henry? Asked Annie. Is this a place from long ago? Suddenly Annie gasped. Jack! Jack! 헷갈린다. 정체성이 헷갈려. Jack! Jack looked up. Annie was pointing toward the hill. On top stood a huge dinosaur. Jack the Fine, golden in the glass. Go, go, said Jack. He threw his notebook into his pack. 다시. He threw his notebook into his pack. He pushed Annie toward the love letter. Bye, Henry, said Annie. She said. Go, said Jack. 허씨, 힘들어. He gave Annie another push. Quit it, she said. But she started up the letter. Jack scrambled after her. Jack scrambled after her. Jack and Annie stumbled into the treehouse. They were panting as they looked out the window at the dinosaur. It was standing on the hilltop, eating flowers off a tree. Oh man, whispered Jack. We are in a time long ago. The dinosaur looked like a huge rhinoceros. The dinosaur looked like a huge rhinoceros with 3 horns instead of one. 한 번 더. The dinosaur looked like a huge rhinoceros with 3 horns instead of one. It had 2 huge horns above each eye, and another one grew out from its nose. It had a big shield-like things behind its necks. And 그게 아니라 헤드구나. Behind its head. Triceratops, said Jack. Does it, people? Whispered. Does it, people? Whispered Annie. I will look it up. Jack grabbed the dinosaur book. He flipped through the pages. There, said Jack, pointing to a picture of a Triceratops. He read the caption. The Triceratops lived in the late Cretaceous period. This plant-eating dinosaur weighed over 12,000 pounds. Jack slammed the book shut. Just plant, no meat. Good, said Annie. Let's go see him up close. Let's go see him up close. Are you crazy? Said Jack. Do you want to take note? 아휴. 벌써 지치냐? Do you want to take notes about him? Asked Annie. You are probably the first person in the whole world to ever see a real life Triceratops. Jack sighed, and he was right. Okay, let's go, he said. Jack shoved the dinosaur book into his bag. He slung his bag over his shoulder. And he started down the ladder, and Jack followed her. Just promise you won't pet him. Jack called down to Annie. I promise, said Annie. Promise you won't kiss him, said Jack. I promise, said Annie. I promise you won't talk to him. I promise, said Annie. Promise you won't. Don't worry, said Annie. Annie and Jack stepped up her. 맞는데? Annie and Jack stepped up the ladder. The pteranodon gave them a friendly look. Annie blew Annie blew him a kiss. Be back soon, Henry, Jack, and she called. Shh, shh, said Jack, and he led the way slowly and carefully through the ferns. When Jack and Annie reached the bottom of the hill, they knelt behind a bush. Annie started to speak, but Jack quickly put his finger to his lips. Then he and Annie picked out a triceratops. The dinosaur was bigger than a truck. He was eating flowers of a magnolia tree. Jack slipped his notebook out of his bag. He wrote, "Each flowers." Annie nudged him. Jack ignored her. He started the triceratops again. He wrote, "Eat slowly." Annie nudged him harder. Jack looked at her. Annie pointed to herself. She walked her finger through the air. She pointed to the dinosaur. She smiled. Is she teasing? Jack wondered. Annie waved at Jack. Jack started to grab her. Annie left and jumped away. She fell into the grass in full view of Triceratops. "Get back!" whispered Jack. Too late. The big dinosaur had spotted Annie. He gazed down at her from the hilltop. Half of a magnolia flower was sticking out of his mouth. "Oops," said Annie. "Get back," Jack said again. He looks nice, Jack," Annie said. "Nice? Watch out for his horns, Annie," said Jack. The Triceratops gazed calmly down at Annie. Then he turned and loped down. 힘들어. Then he turned and loped down the side of the hill. "Bye," said Annie. She turned back to Jack. "See," Jack grunted, but he wrote in his notebook, "Nice." "Come on, let's look around some more," said Annie. As Jack started after Annie, he saw something glittering in the tall grass. Jack reached down and picked it up. It was a golden medallion. A letter was engraved on the medallion, a fancy M. "Oh man, someone was here before us," Jack said softly. Chapter 6, Dinosaur Valley. "Annie, look at this," Jack called. "Look what I found." Annie had gone up to the hilltops. She was picking a flower from the magnolia tree. "Annie, look, a medallion," shouted Jack. But Annie wasn't paying attention to Jack. She was staring at something on the other side of the hilltop. "Oh, wow," she said. Clutching a magnolia flower, she took off down the hill. "Annie, come back," Jack shouted. "Annie, come back!" 뭐 이런 건가? 네. But Annie had disappeared. "Oh, brother," Jack muttered. He stuffed the gold medallion into his jeans pocket. Then Jack heard Annie shriek. Annie, he said. Jack heard, Jack heard another sound as well, a deep, bellowing sound like a tuba. Jack! Jack! Come here, quick! Annie called. Jack raced up the hill. When he got to the top, he gasped. The valley below was filled with nests, big nests made out of mud. The nests were filled with tiny dinosaurs. Annie was crouching next to one of the nests. Towering over her was a gigantic duck-billed dinosaur. Don't panic! Don't move! said Jack. He stepped slowly down the hill toward Annie. The huge dinosaur was waving her arms and making a tuba sound. Oing! Oing! Ah! Jack stopped. He didn't want to get too close. He knelt on the ground. Okay, move toward me. Slowly, he said, and he started to stand up. Don't stand, crawl. Crawl, 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 crawl. Don't stop, crawl, said Jack. Clutching her flower, Annie crawled toward Jack. Still bellowing, the duck-billed dinosaur followed her. Annie freeze. Keep going, Jack said. Annie started crawling again. Jack inched farther down the hill until he was just an arm's distance from Annie. He reached out and grabbed her hand. He pulled Annie toward him. Stay down, Jack said. He crouched. 힘들어. He crouched next to her. Bow your head. Pretend to chew. Chew, said Annie. Yes, said Jack. I lied. That's what you do if a mean dog comes at you. That's what you do if a mean dog comes at you. She's not dog, Jack, said Annie. Just chew, said Jack. Jack and Annie both bowed their heads and pretended to chew. Soon the dinosaur grew quiet. Jack looked up. I don't think she's mad anymore, he said. You saved me, said Annie. Thanks. You have to use your brain, Annie, said Jack. You can't just go running to a nest of babies. There's always a mother nearby. 왜 이렇게 읽지? 컨셉을 잘못 잡았는데. Annie stood up. Annie don't, said Jack, too late. Annie held out her magnolia flower to the dinosaur. I'm sorry, I made you worry about your babies, she said. The dinosaur moved closer to Annie. Annie grabbed the flower from her hand. She reached for another. No more, said Annie. The dinosaur let out a sad tuba sound. But there are more flowers up there, Annie said. She pointed to the top of the hilltop. I will get you some. Annie hurried up the hill. The dinosaur waddled after her. Jack quickly looked at the dinosaur babies. Some were crawling out of their nest. Where are the other mothers? Mothers? Jack wondered. Jack took out the dinosaur book. He flipped through the pages. He found a picture of some duck-billed dinosaurs. He read the caption. The Anatosaurus lived in colonies. While a few mothers babysat the nest, others looked for food. So there were probably more mothers close by, looking for food. Hey, Jack! Annie called. Jack looked up. Annie was at the top of the hill, feeding magnolia flowers to the giant Anatosaurus. Guess what? Annie said. She's nice too. Suddenly, the Anatosaurus made a terrible tuba sound, and he crouched down and started to chew. The dinosaur charged down the hill. She seemed afraid of something. Jack 힘을 좀 빼고. Jack put the book on top of his bag. He hurried to Annie. I wonder why she ran away. Annie said Annie. We are starting to. 애니랑 잭이랑 헷갈리네 이제. We are starting to be friends. Jack looked around. What he saw in the distance almost made him faint. An enormous. 죄송합니다. 네. An enormous monster was coming across the plain. 도망쳐! 뭐지? The monster was walking on two strong legs. It was swinging a long, thick tail and dangling two tiny arms. It had a huge head, and its jaws were wide open. Even from far away, Jack could see its long, gleaming teeth. Tyrannosaurus Rex. whispered Jack. 여기까지만 읽으면 되나? Chapter 7. Let, set, go. Run, Annie, run. Run, Annie, run, cried Jack. Run to the treehouse. 이젠 목소리가 안 나와. 오늘 그만할게요. 챕터 7부터 다음에 이어서 할게요.